It's impossible for me to say whether I would rather cross it by foot or watch the yellow trains go over the red brick bridge. They tilt and bend rightwards to disappear into the buildings and the trees. Or whether I would rather be in the elevated train, crossing the bridge itself, and gaze over the river flowing under it. The engineers unseldom bring to a halt on the bridge, and I cannot help but wonder if they do so just for the beauty of it, or if they just stop to let another train go by. As it does, but didn't always cross, the Oberbaumbrücke. Standing over the river Spree, and standing for so many things, connecting what it once divided, what was once east from what once was west. It stood for the division of the world between two ideological antonyms. Now it stands for a symbol of unification, but still, there remain unbridgeable gaps and ungapable bridges. And there are visible and invisible borders. How fine is the line, and where does one draw it? Rivers often play the roles of borders. We call them natural borders, and there is naturally one side and the other. But then, where does a natural border stop and an unnatural one begin? The one between us and them. How fine is the line, and where does one draw it? This bridge started off as a segment of a border, as a part of the first Berlin Wall, the customs wall which encircled the city when it was medieval. The root of the word stems from a tree, translating to the upper tree bridge. Originally a tree trunk spiked with nails, lowered every night to prevent smugglers from doing what smugglers do. Its two towers today stand as a reminder for its medieval function. The upper, Ober, Baum, Tree, Brücke, bridge. And there was also a corresponding downstream tree bridge, the Ungapable, where there's a street today named the Unterbaumstraße, and a bridge over the river named something else. But who are they and who are we, and what's divided by which tree? The Wehrmacht blew up the middle section of the bridge in an attempt to stop the Red Army from crossing. They succeeded in severely damaging the bridge. And it was to stand like that for decades to come, and in the frigidity of the next war to come, this time between the Allies, it stood for another division, for an unbridgeable gap between two ideologies. It became a part of another border which now ran along the line of the stream of the river flowing under it. Standing on the bridge today, it feels like the city communicates its sharp, dark humor through geometric and linguistic cues. Like the round globe of the TV tower towering over what was once the center of the East, and the round sign of the Mercedes-Benz next to it, along the East Side wall behind which the East Side Mall stands in front of the Amazon tower towering over it. But it feels like there are so many things that are outside of any division and feel like the true character of the city. It speaks a different language through its streets. A capital so many sought to define, build, and claim. They come and go. Their monuments stay. And so does something about Berlin, which remains untenable, unclaimable. Often defined by what it was not, or in binary oppositions. It was always somehow somewhat of an outsider in itself, constantly in motion, evading a final conclusion or solution. It was accused of not being German enough, and there were plans to rebuild it in a new image to comply with that ideology. they failed. For it to become the ground for the East and the West to compete with their facades. But even then, it was the West and the East, but still not the West. It was a refuge for West German youth not willing to serve compulsory military service, and a refuge for East Germans who had the luck to make it over alive, negating what they do not align with their lives, fleeing towards what freedom means for them. There's an art piece permanently installed in the central section of the bridge. A neon game of rock, paper, scissors that lights up at night, randomly generated. Rock beats scissors, scissor beats paper, paper beats rock. We all know the game. It resembles the ever-ongoing competition between political ideologies. I wonder sometimes if it would ever be possible, when the signs both land on outstretched hands, for it ever to lead to a handshake. Someone already answered that with a corresponding graffiti on the back of a sign in the river. The game will forever remain two fists threatening and banging against one another. Which is quite funny, although there were ideas that did not align with the idea of dividing the world between the East and the West, but which were rather inspired by connecting the North and the South, and dreamt to build a new world, to build the world anew. And behind the art piece, beneath the train tracks, under the church-like vaults of the bridge, people find what they used to find in churches. Sanctuary. Now when God is dead and we're free. Another interpretation of the art installation is that it stands to imply the arbitrariness in the decisions to migrate. And in a sense, in all of us here, Berlin confirms what it is. Being a stepmother city for so many knots and in-betweens, built by generations tired of wars, divisions, and superpowers, we create the scar tissue that heals divisions from everything that grew out of destruction, the beauty of the destroyed and reinvented. We're punk, DIY, self-organized riots. We speak the same language and understand the language the city speaks. Translations are also bridges. They lead the meaning over to another language by drawing a relation to it, so that one can trans-relate to something seemingly foreign. They help the message over to the other side, because there are things that are outside of language, but not outside the kindness of our kind, to be able to relate to another and find a common ground that can bridge the gaps between us and help us overcome. Come over. And there's a language in which the late from translate is vod, like water, like water. Prevod, prevest, prevedi, prevedime. Lead me over the water. And there was a diplomat who wrote in this language, who lived in Berlin as an ambassador in the 30s, trying to keep peace in a war-torn world. Having lost this battle, he wrote about an old bridge in a divided region, and through his writing, worked on fortifying ungapable bridges. Bridges are victories over evil, said a Hoja in his book, who told a story about how bridges came to exist. God created earth to be perfectly round, heaven for the humans to live on. Jealous of this sublime gift, Satan rasped its surface with his long nails, creating deep scars through which rivers started to flow, to divide the land and people. God then sent his angels to earth, and when they descended to see the agony of the people, unable to reach their loved ones on the other side, reaching and calling to each other in vain, the angels in compassion stood over these places and spread their wings the people started crossing. And so the people learned to build bridges from the angels. And so every bridge has an angel standing over it and protecting it. Tako se na kapiji, između neba, reke i brda. Naraštaj za naraštaj mučio, da ne želi preko mere ono što mutna voda odnese. Tu je u njih ulazila nesvesna filozofija kasabe, da je život neshvatljivo čud, jer se neprestano troši i osipa, a ipak traje i stoji čvrsto, kao na Drini ćuprije. Perhaps the line to draw could be to say that there are indeed ideals to live by and die for, but not ideologies to kill for. And one must never forget to always make time to do a little dance, because after all, that is a love language we all speak.